order.
That is President Biden in Bali with his Chinese counterpart, and the president brought some fresh momentum and energy to Asia following the midterm elections. We'll have more on that in a bit. Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Weijia Jiang, coming to you from our Washington bureau. Thank you for joining us. The midterm elections are still not over, 6 days after Election Day, with a number of races still to be decided. CBS News currently estimates the House is leaning Republican, with the GOP holding at least 214 seats and Democrats total sitting at 210, but 218 seats are needed to control the chamber. And in the Senate, Democrats will keep their majority. The runoff race in Georgia between Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and his challenger Herschel Walker will be held on December 6th to determine who gets the final Senate seat. Now comes what President Biden can get done before the next session of Congress is sworn in on January 3rd. Appearing on Face the Nation Sunday, senior advisor to the president, Anita Dunn, talked with moderator Margaret Brennan about what the administration's priorities are during the upcoming lame duck session of Congress.
We have to keep the government open and funded. That is obviously priority number one. Other lame duck priorities will certainly include additional funding for Ukraine, which has been, and the president has said he hopes will continue to be, a bipartisan issue in the United States Congress. Obviously, emergency funding for the natural disasters that Florida and Puerto Rico suffered earlier this year, and additional priorities for the administration as well. But keep the government open and running is the number one priority.
For more, I'm joined by two of my CBS News colleagues. Political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns is right here with me at the desk, and chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa joins us here at the Washington bureau. Thank you both for being here today. Robert, I want to start with you because we just heard from Anita Dunn, who seems optimistic about, what more they can do. President Biden has already invited leaders of both parties to join him at the White House when he gets back from the G20. But there's still a big question about who that leadership is going to be when the new session of Congress starts. Of course, House Republicans are already gearing up to take over, and Kevin McCarthy has thrown his hat into the ring. But how likely is it that he is going to win, given some pushback that we're hearing about from members of his own party?
Weijia and Caitlin, it's good to be with you. We're looking at a very fluid moment right now in Washington. To build on your own reporting, what we're seeing in the House Republican Conference is a real debate over the party's future. It does look like, based on my conversations with members today, that Kevin McCarthy has the votes to be the leader of the House Republicans, but he's going to face some tough questions this afternoon in a candidate forum, a private closed-door meeting where they're going to talk about who should be the leader, who should be the majority leader, who should be the majority whip. The most competitive race at this moment is for that number 3 spot, should the Republicans have the majority whip. You have Congressman Jim Banks of Indiana, Congressman Tom Emmer, and others eyeing that leadership slot. And on the Democratic side in the House, Speaker Pelosi has long been expected to potentially move out of the House or leave the leadership at some point should the Democrats lose big in November. But, of course, they did not lose big. It's a very narrow margin in the House, and she is being encouraged by some of her members, which she has acknowledged publicly, to stay in the leadership. Looming over all of this in the coming days will be former President Trump's announcement on Tuesday. His aides say he's likely to formally launch a 2024 presidential bid. And so all of this is politically stirring the pot in Washington at a very tense time for both parties, but especially for Republicans who have a reckoning about where they want to go.
And it's not only affecting Congress, of course, it's affecting the party at large. Can you talk about how the results from the midterm elections is already having an impact on leadership within the GOP?
You're seeing an active race right now for the Republican National Committee, but not necessarily something that's playing out in public. This is very inside politics, but it's revealing about the GOP at this moment. Ronna McDaniel, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, the chairwoman, she is someone who has a lot of support in the Trump wing of the party, and she's not facing a formal challenge yet, but there's chatter among my sources on the RNC about whether she should maybe exit out. And we saw earlier today, CBS News has confirmed that the co-chair of the party, Tommy Hicks, has decided that he will not run for a third term. So you see the co-chair of the GOP, of the Republican National Committee, saying today, not going to run again for a third term. He cited family in his letter. But this comes at a time when many RNC members, RNC donors are calling up CBS News and others and saying maybe this is a crossroads, a time for a new leadership. But if you're going to take on Ronna McDaniel, the chair, you're going to have to run a real race against her, because despite what happened last week in the midterms, the disappointment, she does still have a lot of support.
And Caitlin, I know you got one of those calls today. Over on the Senate side, you spoke with a Republican operative who works on Senate races. How are they grappling with the fact that they were unable to take control despite, everything that we were hearing before Election Day?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of finger pointing going on, especially since Republicans have pointed out to us that they not only lost independent voters, but they also didn't have their base of support turn out in the numbers that they needed. And I think what's really interesting in my conversations with Republicans, at least, is that there has really been no sugarcoating the results. They haven't been saying, well, at least we won. I mean, some have, but most of them are not saying, well, at least we won the majority. It was an underperformance. And it was Republicans I've been talking to have acknowledged that underperformance. There's a lot of finger pointing going on between Mitch McConnell's group and the NRSC, which is run by Rick Scott. Remember, several months ago, they kind of had a public falling out when Rick Scott introduced his plan for moving forward. He was criticized for what it said about taxes and health care and Social Security. But his argument at the time was we need to have a plan and tell the American people what we will do if we win. Talking to sources that are familiar with these Senate races, they have said that, if you're losing independents and not turning out your base, there's lots of blame to go around, but it also points to the Republican Party not having a message for what they would do. A source I talked to essentially said, we've been telling people not to vote for the other guy, but what would we do in its place? And in that void, you had Democrats able to seize on a lot of different things, on democracy, on abortion access in particular, became a motivating factor. And so what's interesting this time around is there are a lot of Republicans acknowledging what happened, trying to find a way forward, but a lot of people blaming each other.
The message about what they would do was not clear, but the message about what they believed was wrong was very clear.
Right.
They were blaming Democrats for inflation and really discounted how much abortion would play a role. And in your reporting, you found that it was a lot.
It was really interesting because when you look at specific races in Pennsylvania, where we saw Democrats flip a Senate seat in their favor, and in Michigan, where you saw Democrats keep the governorship but flip the state Senate and the state House to Democrats. They had that ballot measure on abortion, literally on the ballot. But we saw in those two states that abortion access as an issue outpaced concern about inflation. So people that I've talked to on the organizing side, on the campaign side, have said that this was a very motivating factor for people, and that the Democratic base was really asleep, essentially, until that Dobbs decision. And this certainly awakened that. And Republicans I've been talking to, and kind of those in the pro-life movement, have said that Republicans kind of ran away from the issue. They didn't necessarily engage in it, and they ended up potentially depressing their base. They point to that in Pennsylvania as well.
And it will no doubt be an issue in 2024 as well, which, Robert, you mentioned earlier, because tomorrow we are expecting a big announcement from former President Trump. The former Vice President, Mike Pence, recently sat down with ABC News, and I want to play a clip from what he said about Trump. And
it angered me. But I turned to my daughter, who was standing nearby, and I said, it doesn't take courage to break the law. It takes courage to uphold the law. I mean, the president's words were reckless. It was clear he decided to be part of the problem.
Bob, we didn't hear that message during January 6th or even in the weeks right afterward. More and more, the former vice president's message has become more explicit in condemning Trump. What does it tell you about his own aspirations that he's willing to, so explicitly call out Trump now?
Based on our reporting here at CBS News, former Vice President Pence very much wants to run for president in 2024, is moving in that direction. He has not formally announced anything, but he has winked at it, hinted at the idea at appearances in recent months. And this all comes ahead of his new book, which is coming out, called So Help Me God. And this talks about his experience as vice president in the Trump administration. What's revealing about all of this is that Pence, on one hand, has so much ambition to still be a part of national politics, to lead the Republican Party potentially, and he doesn't want to go to total war with former President Trump because he wants to win over the Trump coalition at some level, but he doesn't want to be seen as a supplicant to Trump. And as he carves out his own independent space inside the GOP potentially, he is revealing more of the truth of the moment of January 6th and what he believes happened and how he processed it as the vice president at the time. It's notable that he was asked to come before the January 6th committee. This is Pence coming forward in his own way, not before Congress. This is not under oath testimony. This is an interview with ABC News, his own book. And so Pence is on a political terrain that's going to be complicated as he moves toward a 2024 run. And the questions about January 6th will continue to persist as that investigation continues.
And I know both of you will be on that rocky road together. Caitlin Huey-Burns and Robert Costa, thank you.
Thank you.
Democrats had a better night than their Republican counterparts expected, but is there still hope within the party that they could keep control of the House? I'll ask the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee's executive director next. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
Original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became a sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
When weather turns extreme.
Massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane.
Every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We are so excited, we just can't hide it.
CBS Mornings are, well, everything your morning should be.
Let's do it!
Let's go!
CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Weijia Jiang. As we mentioned, the House majority is still up in the air. A number of races are too close to call, but CBS News currently estimates the House is leaning in Republicans' favor. There are currently 11 races left to be called. 10 of those are considered battlegrounds. Tim Persico joins us now. He is the executive director of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Tim, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
I remember on election night, right before returns were coming in, my sources at the White House were saying, look, we don't actually think it's going to be as big of a red wave as predicted. Did you feel the same way? Are you surprised by how close it is right now?
We did feel the same way. We had a lot of, going into Election Day, we had a lot of conflicting information, but our polling always told us that it was going to be pretty close. Most of our races were, within the margin of error, up a little bit, down a little bit. So we thought that we had a shot at keeping it close. We weren't sure exactly where it was going to land, but that it would probably be better than some folks thought.
And I know nothing is official yet. Obviously, We're still waiting on some results. But, one big question is what happens with Speaker Pelosi.
Sure.
Does she, try to keep that position if Democrats retain the House? Does she go for minority leader? Does she step aside? What do you think?
Oh, I have no idea. She doesn't tell me.
Do you support? Are there any candidates that you would support if not Pelosi?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think that more than anything, what I would say is that Speaker Pelosi is incredible. It has been amazing to be anywhere near her and get to see her work. And I think that no matter what she decides to do, she's earned it. If she wants to stay or she wants to do something else, she has earned that. And that whoever comes after her is going to have some huge, huge shoes to fill because she is a true one of one. And I think a uniquely talented and gifted politician.
I want to get back to the races
Sure.
because you said that money is everything.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you think that was to blame for Sean Patrick Maloney losing his race. Of course, he has publicly said that he could have used a little more help from some of his colleagues.
Sure. I think, money is, it's just like, the saying, it's not everything, but it is pretty important. And so ultimately, I think that we were able to distribute our resources as well as we could. Obviously, hindsight being 20/20, there are always things you might do differently, but that the sheer amount of outside spending by the conservative folks did create some problems, and it did mean that we had to shift our resources or shift our our strategy. But yeah, I think what the chairman was saying was basically that not that anybody needed to do anything more for him, but that the amount of money that was devoted to defeating him was overwhelming. I mean, it was probably nearly $10 million, and that he was hopeful that by taking that sort of incoming, that maybe it was able to divert those resources from some other races.
You also poured quite a bit of money into propping up election deniers as a strategy. Obviously, that worked, given the number of candidates who lost their races. But I wonder if you have any concern about what that did for supporters to lend even more credibility to those election deniers, and if you worry that fervor could turn into action.
I guess I would, one, challenge the idea that we poured quite a bit of money because it was, one race. But also, I think that ultimately, we make decisions we don't like to be cavalier about anything, right? Like you don't want to have you don't want to go into anything, or take any considerations lightly. However, I think ultimately, in the race that you're talking about, Michigan 3, Peter Meijer was a vote for Kevin McCarthy, no matter what, and that Peter Meijer was not not a moderate by any stretch of the imagination. He was a very conservative member of Congress. Our job is to keep the gavel out of Kevin McCarthy's hands, because Kevin McCarthy is is certainly no friend to truth or small d democracy, and so that's how we saw this. And I think that I think we made smart decisions or smart investments.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us, Tim. Appreciate it. President Biden met face-to-face with Chinese President Xi Jinping today at the G20 in Bali. What he told him when Red and Blue comes back.
I'm thinking about it.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping up their attacks to extort victims. Let's start with easy. Who's attacking? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
I'm thinking about it.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt. Absolutely.
As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, there are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
Massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane.
every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When it comes to the money you spend every day, we have you covered every morning. Making money makes sense. Weekdays on CBS Mornings.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
I absolutely believe there's need not be a new Cold War. I've met many times with Xi Jinping, and we were candid and clear with one another across the board. And I do not think there's any imminent attempt on the part of China to invade Taiwan. And I made it clear that our policy on Taiwan has not changed at all.
President Biden says his administration will keep open the lines of communication with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The pair met face-to-face for the first time since Mr. Biden took office. Both leaders were able to come out of the meeting with wins. President Biden reiterated his stance on the One China policy, a major point of contention between the two leaders. President Xi, on the other hand, publicly rebuked Russia's invasion of Ukraine, something he's been hesitant to do in the past. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins me now, also co-parent on Saturday morning ballet classes.
That's right.
For our daughters.
That's right.
Ed, you know, President Biden...
Proving we should just take a camera to ballet class and do this from there.
Okay, we will next time. He reminds us all the time that he has this long-standing relationship with Xi. But, of course, this time he's the president, and Xi has just secured his third term.
Right.
What were your takeaways from these two finally meeting, and how important was it to really pin down where the U.S. stands on the One China policy?
It's funny, you think about presidents and the things they want to get done and the days that they probably relish the most. And this has to be a top 3 day, at least policy-wise, for the president, because he's been talking about this meeting and being able to sit with this leader since before the Iowa caucuses, making the point that he, more than any other American official, knew how to talk to him, was ready to do so, had a great relationship with him, comparably. Although others have pointed out this week that given his more recent interactions with Vladimir Putin, Putin may now have met with President Xi more than President Biden at this point. Either way, big meeting for him, allows this reset of the relationship to happen, something that both sides say they've been eager to do. Certainly at the White House, they've been eager for this. And signaling that things like Secretary of State Blinken going to China is going to happen now. The climate talks are going to resume. They're going to talk about international debt concerns so that they don't sink the economies of a bunch of smaller countries. This is what the world needs. And this is exactly the meeting that the president wanted to have as the G20 got underway, because it shows the rest of the world, A, these two superpowers are talking, and they're talking in Asia, and they're also talking when Vladimir Putin isn't there.
And it made it a lot easier for Biden to have this conversation because of what we just saw in the midterm elections, right?
Exactly.
And he mentioned that about how, you know, democracy still stands. It sort of shows the world that America is here.
Right.
What did you make of him making a point to say that?
Because the Xi team is making the same point in their realm, which is he just got 5 more years. Well, he got 5 more years. My party barely lost. In fact, I beat the odds. They both come with some domestic political wins. And it's quite telling that, you know, we sit here and we watch the one-upsmanship between Democrats and Republicans. This administration, I think more than previous ones, likes to go to these big global conferences and try to stick it to autocracies and say, see, democracies know what to do. They know how to run things. They know how to peacefully coexist with themselves. Democracies are better than autocracies.
Friendships with our allies.
And both sides are saying they're competitors. They don't need to be friends. But they agree they need to be talking. And so that was a good way to start these meetings, I believe.
That's right. And President Biden says time and time again that he wants competition, not conflict. But I know a lot of people are watching what China does in Taiwan because they're wondering, hey, are there going to be U.S. boots on the ground or not?
Right.
Do you think that the president offered any more clarity about what he means when he says we will defend Taiwan at any
Not today. And in fact, I know he was asked that question, do you think they will invade? And he dodged it. But I think that's one of those issues that domestically he's going to face questions on from Republicans and Democrats alike going into next year. There's been great unity in terms of defending Ukraine. There will be questions asked, well, what is the extent of our plan to help Taiwan if that day comes, when that day comes? Because now everybody seems to think it's coming. But Republicans have made pretty clear the U.S. needs to be ready to stand with them, which is why they got so excited about Speaker Pelosi going when she did, because that was a strong signal that they want to send to a key ally, Taiwan.
But China also sent a signal when they stopped all talks with the U.S. after Pelosi visited. And I wonder, you know, how important it is for China to say that they will resume climate talks, especially because, you know, they're going to the G20. That's certain to be, you know, one of the biggest conversations there.
Well, I know Biden officials, at least, were touting the fact that they're restarting them, because that is one of the few issues on which the two countries have and can conceivably continue cooperating, right, is figuring out how to lower CO2 levels and other concerns related to that. I mean, there's that. There's, again, international debt issues and very little else. where they can potentially be in cohesion,
Sure.
and then they part ways for competitive reasons.
Yes, and we will have to watch to see how that relationship plays out, because if we know President Biden, he will want to have more discussions with Xi.
Absolutely.
All right, Ed O'Keefe, thank you for joining us today. That does it for us. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And a reminder, if you want to watch previous episodes of the program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just head over to cbsnews.com/red and blue.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
When folks on the right talk about socialism, it's a boogeyman.